Scott, and you listen to all this rhetoric coming out of the Republican Party, these are the same people that defended opening fire hoses on protesters in the 60s on the Selma Bridge.
I think those were Democrats, Julie. Just FYI. Those are Democrats. Those were Democrats in the 60s.
Scott, people like you
that was your party.
Exactly that kind of behavior.
But thank you for reminding everybody that Democrats were against civil rights.
How about this, Scott? Why don't you let me finish and stop interrupting? Because clearly, whenever anybody tries
you're the one that brought up Democrats. I agree with you. Democrats shouldn't have been against civil rights.
You're the person. Well, there you go. How about this, Scott? Why don't you continue talking, and I'll just sit here and listen to you.
Democrat strategist Julia Ruginsky actually went on to CNN to try to blast Scott Jennings, claiming all these things that she clearly has no historical idea on what she's talking about. She got embarrassed, and now she's calling for Scott Jennings to be removed from CNN. Let's get into it.
Sure. He's on Sunday, writing in part, quote, "The problem is not that Jennings is a Republican. Sure. The problem is how he behaves, what he contributes, and what his presence signals about what CNN now tolerates. On air, Jennings does not debate. He blathers. He talks over women with particular frequency, interrupts relentlessly, and treats panel discussions as contests of volume and obstination."
Scott Jennings is the only reason people tune into the Abby Phillip show. To be completely honest with you, I never see anybody making clips on either the right or the left if Scott Jennings is not in it about CNN, unless they say something really crazy. I'm just leaving that note here on that. I don't think anybody's taking them too serious these days. Let's get back into it.
Obstinacy? Yes. I can look at that. Rather than obstinacy. Rather than as an exchange of ideas. She continues, CNN executives know this. They see the segments and receive the feedback. They understand the pattern, and yet the network continues to book him, elevate him, and protect him. The message it sends is unmistakable. Decorum is optional. Accuracy is negotiable. And if you're allowed enough, management will treat you as indispensable. Ruginsky also claims there are several women who have not been invited back onto CNN after, quote, embarrassing Jennings on air, suggesting that Jennings uses his influence to essentially get the women banned from the network.
Okay, guys, first off, if you're familiar with the Abby Phillip show, I am familiar with it. I watch people from all across the political spectrum. And the funniest part to me is the idea that Scott Jennings is the one that is being hateful and all this stuff in this. Now, Scott Jennings is a conservative, but I'm going to tell you, CNN does not book normal Democrat people. That CNN does not book like the salt of the earth type Democrats that actually will have a conversation with you. They don't book the Democrats that are middle of the road Democrats. They book the progressive left, insane people that run up in churches and support that type of stuff, like we're seeing with Don Lemon here. They get people like that on their show to debate Scott Jennings. And Scott Jennings' recall factor is so fast. He's so good at, coming up with these responses at such a little amount of time that he's got, that he just eats them alive, man. It doesn't matter which side you're particularly on with this. If you look at the debate on this, the funniest part is when that strategist, Julia, comes up and she says, "Oh, the people that were turning the water hoses on people," and go back and look at history. That was the Democrats that did that. That was Democrats. And we're going to touch on something here in a few minutes. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit on how the voting actually went that maybe people don't know about. Maybe you do not know the historical factor here. Maybe you do. And we'll touch on that later in the video. Let's see what Robbie's got to say here.
Okay. Ruginsky's post drew strong reactions from left-wing and right-wing commentators online. Radio host Chris Segal responded, writing, "Scott's mean to girls is the best you've got if you're not invited back on CNN. It's probably for the same reason you're not invited back on Fox. You're not that good at it."
That's facts.
But defense attorney Julius Kim says, quote, "Great article and needed to be said. I've appeared on CNN numerous times and haven't watched CNN in over a year because they have lost their way."
See, okay, guys, here is the argument from people in the middle, libertarians and people on the right when it comes to CNN and what they're actually doing. CNN, Scott Jennings is one of the only good things they have going for themselves. The Abby Phillip show, if you did not have somebody pushing back on your argument, it's supposed to be a debate show, but the Abby Phillip show is not really a debate show, guys. It's he gets teamed up on every night that they have this show. Every episode I've seen of the Abby Phillip show, Democrats it's not really Democrats. It's the ultra left Democrats, the more liberal people. There's very rarely a normal middle of the road Democrat on the Abby Phillip show. They're all ultra left. So I want to clarify, there are different types of people on the left. There's the middle of the road Democrats, pretty cool to hang out with. They're nice. They can talk with you about different things. And then you've got the progressive left extreme part of it that wants to run up in churches and keep people from worshiping God because they hate ICE. Will CNN keep Scott Jennings around? I would think so, because he actually gives you factual information. And we are going to talk a little bit later in the video about how the voting actually went during the civil rights movement. And we're going to look at a proportionality of how that actually shaped up. And it's not what you might think it is. So here we go.
So sad.
I know you love Scott Jennings. I'm probably going to throw people off a little bit over here, but I watched an interview with Abby Phillips maybe like a week ago, and somebody was asking her, because she's getting a lot of criticism for her show. Like, I know she probably has a lot of say in it, but CNN developed it out and then provides her the opportunity. And so people were like, well, you platform conversations instead of like having this civilized grown-up dialogue, and you have people arguing across the table. How is that helpful towards getting to the meat of potatoes of what's actually happening in our country and getting down to it? And she says, well, if you're referring to, because they were pulling out clips like Scott Jennings, she's like, you have to remember 77 million people voted for President Trump. And so I would assume that a large majority of those people agree with a lot of the points that Jennings is making. And so him not being represented there does not help us get to some conclusion, because these people.
That's a great point. That's a great point. By her right here. The whole idea that you can morally say somebody is wrong just because of how they voted, that's the thing that trips me up about anybody that makes any kind of assessment about anybody on any side. You don't really know. I mean, everybody's experience is different in life, so they might be voting. Some people might be voting for Trump when it comes to, the economy, which we are at a record low inflation rate. And over the last ever how many years, we're like 2.3, 2.4, maybe at this moment in time. That's way down from the 9.4, 5, 6, 9 point something that we were under during the Biden administration. So people might vote for economical things. People might vote for, what books you can actually read to people in schools when they have kids. They might vote for, things to that magnitude that are important to them. So the idea of people calling each other, or people like the CNN panelists that come on the Abby Phillip show, the irony of it is they call everyone who doesn't vote just like them. They believe they are morally above anybody who voted for anybody other than Kamala Harris in this last election. Let's get back into it.
Still exist in our country, and whether you agree with them or not, dialogue is needed. Like, this is what happens when you go home and disagree with someone politically, but still want to have some kind of understanding. And not every time, the clips that go viral, people need to understand, are the ones where people are yelling or Anna Navarro screaming, but that's not how the show goes most of the time. And also, Anna Navarro is a paid CNN contributor.
It is kind of how that show goes a lot of the times. I'll give you an example of exactly how the Abby Phillip show goes. The Abby Phillip talks, and then you have 3 or 4 Democrat panelists, such as Democrat strategists, previous administration, people that are on the left. You might have a right-wing person on there once in a while with Scott Jennings, but most of the time he's outnumbered. They talk for about 3 or 4 minutes. He talks for about 30 seconds and gets interrupted. So he's got to get his facts out real fast, because they're going to interrupt him. Because if you say anything that is against these individuals mentally, if they cannot handle it, and they are going to interrupt you. I mean, it happens every night. Just turn on CNN and watch the Abby Phillip show. You'll see it happen every episode.
Scott Jennings is a paid CNN contributor. So when somebody's complaining about why CNN keeps bringing them back, well, they're on payroll. It's actually their job. Like, when I worked for News Nation before I worked here, you have a minimum amount of times you have to show up on throughout the week if you're a paid contributor. You can't not do that or you don't get paid.
Right. So there are so many false notions in Ruginsky's Substack post. First, the idea that Scott Jennings is like uniquely or very aggressive and loud and abrasive it does not jive with all of the appearances I've watched. He usually waits his turn to chime in. Yes, they have a go back. He doesn't, cable
news definitely makes a face, or like
he makes faces, but cable news is a dance.
Scott Jennings does make faces. That's funny as crap. But here's the thing. He's actually one of the few people on these debate shows. He's one of the few people that listens to what they're saying. And then when he rebuts it and he pokes a hole or many holes, in this case with Julia Ruginsky, I mean, that's embarrassing. When you get on there and you're blaming somebody or a party for doing something such horrendously bad back in the day, spraying down, Black Americans with water hoses, that's horrendous. That's terrible, man. That's terrible. And when you say, well, Scott, that was your party. It was not. That was the Democrats. And I don't know if this is lost to time, but he is absolutely right. And when he poked a hole in what she was saying, she could not handle it. And now she's calling for CNN to fire him because that's what these progressive left people do. If you prove them wrong, they want you fired, canceled, deplatformed. They just go down a list and they don't get you. Then they go after the person that is, CNN as a head. So it's crazy, man. It's, I'm not calling a person fascist like they like to do. They like to call people Nazis and fascists, but that is fascist thinking. When you don't want to hear anybody else's opinion and you're like, shut up, I can't handle it. That is a fascist viewpoint. Like it's so crazy, but they're becoming the thing that they're claiming everybody else is. It's hard to interject. If you've got 5 people, you interject. You want to make sure you don't just get talked over. But if you're excessively cutting people off, it's not fair. It's hard to do. He is not more so than anyone else cutting people off or talking over them or shouting them down. He's certainly not doing it to women more than men. I'm sure he's done it on occasion where he just talks over somebody because you get worked up. Everybody, Anna Navarro does that. Everybody does that. That's par for the course. He doesn't do it to women more than anyone else. I saw a clip of him utterly destroying Cameron Kasky, that 25-year-old dude, not a woman. He does that to everyone. He rolls his eyes, because it's amusing. He's a very eloquent articulator of the conservative Trump position, the actual conservative Trump position. What CNN used to have on was a bunch of never Trump Republicans in name, but who all hate Trump and are now respected and beloved by Democrats. That's a great point that Robbie Soav is making right here. CNN normally has on the type of Republican like Elizabeth Warren. That's not even a Republican, to be honest with you. So they're having people on they call them rhinos. And it's what that stands for is Republican in name only. So if you guys ever hear people say, oh, they're a rhino, it really means they really side more with Democrats and really, or Democrat policy or liberal policy, but they're really, they're filed under the R under their name as Republican, but they vote all the time with Democrat policy, liberal policy. So if you ever hear anybody say rhino, that's just a media name for Republican in name only.
Still the case on MSNBC where Nicole Wallace counts as a Republican is insane.
Right.
But Joe stop. On CNN, it's different, and they've done a good job catering to different opinions.
But just because you don't want to acknowledge that there's still a traditional conservative exists, like Michael Steele, he's also on MSNBC or MS Now. Yeah. And he used to be the former head of the RNC.
Not representative.
Okay, he might not be representative of the MAGA base, but what happened to all the Republicans that were like George W. Bush Republicans?
They became Democrats.
No, that's not true.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
Still truly believe in
they did.
Especially fiscal responsibility. So
a lot of the people that were those types of Republicans, George W. Bush Republicans, they became Democrats. That's a great point, man, because the Republican Party at that point in time, it wasn't so much they were going to the left. It was they were kind of involved in this type of uniparty type thing. So that what was going on there. We'll get back into it. Let's finish this clip, and then I got something to say.
You cannot vote Democratic sometimes if you feel that strongly on it. So maybe these people became independents, but you're not convincing me that all these people that loved Bush are now Democrats. I just don't believe it.
A lot of them loved Bush and now love Trump. But people who loved Republican policies, loved a lot of Bush's foreign policy, nation building, that whole thing. Those people are all for the most part Democrats now.
Exactly.
Bill Christ, they're founders of the Bulwark and other news publications like that. They're ex-Republicans turned Democrats. Who else is Dispatch too? That's another one of them. on and on and on. So these people they're not representative of, they're just not like a lot of actual card-carrying Republicans out there who hate Trump and want to see him fail and against everything he does. You're right that there's a variety of opinion. There are Republicans who disagree with Trump on this or that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who voted for him for the first time, who voted from this time, who are not Republicans and don't love everything he's doing. But that's a different category. And they deserve.
All right, guys. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964 party vote breakdown. So I want to mention this. The final vote was 290 to 130 in favor of passing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. You had proportionally, most Republicans supported the bill proportionally more than Democrats. So the idea that Democrats make this argument that Republicans were against the civil rights movement is completely false. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican president. The Republican Party is known as the anti-slavery party. Okay, when it comes down to this, you have basically the Senate. The Senate during that final passage, it says while exact party count is not noted, a strong majority of Republicans supported it, and many Democrats did as well. But Southern Democrats provided most of the opposition. Guys, when we were watching, I don't know if many of you guys saw the Martin Luther King video I dropped on MLK Day yesterday, but I want to mention something to you. In that video, Martin Luther King is talking about the governor of Alabama. Okay, go back and watch that video. That is a Democrat. That was a Democrat. So I'm trying to mention you guys a little historical facts here. The idea and the narrative that Republicans and people that vote to the right were somehow against, civil rights movement, that's not accurate. Proportionally, more Republicans voted for the Civil Rights Act than Democrats did. And you know what? There was a lot of people, man, in this world that do not want to accept factual information. And what happened with Scott Jennings and this lady, this Democrat strategist, you can't go on there and spit a bunch of nonsense to somebody who has got the knowledge to correct you, and they get angry at them and call them to be fired. Hope you guys have a blessed and wonderful day. You watch On Air Nick Java podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. See you guys on the next one.